for outsiders who don't know Kenya, who's trying to make sense of like what's going on in Kenya, I don't understand it. It might help to just start by outlining sort of the broad outlines of Kenya's sort of post-colonial history, its political history, and take your time when you do so, and kind of just break it down for us, like what happened, what are like the key moments that lays the foundations for the kind of politics that we see in Kenya now that we inherited.
Okay, I hope my assessment is not very blunt and biased, but I will try. So Kenya, 47 million people, but a lot of poverty. Recently, we were declared a lower middle class country, but that doesn't do much for many people who are still waiting for, like in other places, land to be redistributed, which never happened post when we got independence, and for just a life of dignity. So just a snapshot of key events in Kenya's political history between 1952 to 1959. If I'm not mistaken, there was an emergency period when the Mau Mau led like the liberation struggle for Kenya's independence. We got independence in 1963, but unfortunately, the people who were fighting in the forest were not on the table. They were not there negotiating for independence. When independence came, not Uhuru Kenyatta, sorry, but Jomo Kenyatta, the dad of Uhuru Kenyatta, who's the current president, just even if he had denied being in the Mau Mau, became the president, but he just embarked on a process of primitive accumulation for his kin, his ethnic kin, and unfortunately, many people who had fought for independence did not see any of the fruits of independence. So he takes power in 1963, then embarks on this process of accumulation. Kenya in the region is like the principal node for capitalism. We still have capitalism, unfortunately, and so our politics is oriented around like capitalist exploitation, but also obviously attendant to that is primitive accumulation and accumulation by dispossession. And then the political assassinations start. Really revolutionary leaders like Piogama Pinto, who was a Goan Kenyan, who was part of the Communist Party of Kenya, who used to give guns to the Mau Mau. He was shot, and anyone who criticized the government was shot, or anyone who they thought was competition was shot. So Tom Mboya was shot, even if he also has contested history. And Tom Mboya is known as the person who helped consolidate the airlifts to America that saw people like Obama's dad taken to the US to study. Fast forward to 1978, Kenyatta dies, and he's replaced by Moi, who then led the country for 24 years. And this was a time of complete authoritarianism, a lot of torture for people. The country was, it became a one-party state formally, and it was still more capitalist accumulation, lots of plunder, and continued for 24 years. I know most of you have heard about Moi, and then in 2000, but along these years, there was always resistance. I don't want to make it, even if Kenyan politics is pretty heartbreaking, formal Kenyan politics, I don't want to make it sound so all gloom and doom, because Kenyans have always resisted in the ways that they can. And an example of this were the multi-party rallies that were happening in 1992 that saw the reinstatement of multi-party democracy, but also the protests by the mothers of political prisoners who, together with Wangari Maathai, protested for almost a year, having a sit-in at a park close to where their sons were being tortured and kept. And so that allowed for political prisoners to be released. And then in 2002, on the back, there was a coalition of civil society actors and, to be honest, recycled politicians, but they came and they won an election in 2002. This is after Moi conceded that he wouldn't run again. So this is 2002. Kenyans have voted the happiest people on the planet. They have a new government. Mo is gone. Everyone is full of mirth and like everything is possible. But really, it wasn't. It didn't render the changes that people wanted, unfortunately. So, Wangui Kimari was in. We still love capitalism. We still think we're the best thing since sliced bread in the region. Kenyans really, actually, unfortunately, have a superiority complex in the region. And then we have post-election violence in 2007, 2008, when Mwai Kibaki, who was running against Raila, didn't concede an election that everyone knows was stolen and rigged. And that was a really dark moment because the over 1,200 people who were killed have never had any redress. Land issues have never been redressed. And the two people who had cases in the ICC, principally because of this violence, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, are now our leaders. So we really, in 2013, running in some ways on a campaign that was anti-imperialist because they said they were taken to the ICC by imperialists. They won the election even if they had like 5 charges each at least at the ICC. And we're still dealing with these figures. And our opposition doesn't really exist. And people may wonder why I haven't mentioned Raila, because, I mean, in some ways, Raila is no longer an opposition leader. He's now been through a process called a handshake, or the Building Bridges Initiative, which people all know is the Building Billionaires Initiative. They're trying to form this coalition that is supposedly there to unify Kenyans, and now is being used to ostracize William Ruto, who had run it before. And just to conclude, I mean, it really is, if you look, Raila, for example, is the son of the first vice president, and Uhuru Kenyatta is the son of the first president. So if those are the two principal leaders in our country, you can see that if you don't belong to a historically elite family, you have no chance for formal politics. And the government has a really, it's just populated by people whose fathers were chiefs or archbishops or in the colonial administration. And that's what we're stuck with. And just to conclude, I mean, you had asked me, Sean, what it is, and I would say Kenyan politics is basically musical chairs by geriatric male politicians who have no commitment to the common people's struggle, unfortunately.